Hi, everyone, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Influence series. And if you haven't guessed it, this is all about influence, which I believe is probably one of the most powerful currencies that any business leader can have. And so, what I'm doing, and this is the first episode of that series, is I'm connecting you to who I believe are influencers to really help uncover how business leaders today are using influence to create a better business environment and impact their markets in a desired way. And with me in the hot seat today is none other than Garry Grant. He is a super ding-dong professional speaker. He travels all over the place, apparently, and he's also the CEO of SEO Inc. Gary, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very, very much. And thank you for inviting me on here. I'm really looking forward to this. It should be fun. I'll make it fun.
Yeah, well, let's do it, man. So why don't you give us the elevator pitch? Like, what do you actually do?
Okay. I'll give you a little background on me and then the elevator pitch on the company. So me, I've always been an entrepreneur. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and it was just tough, right? But at the age of 13, I remember going around collecting Slurpee cups so I can get money for things. I had carnivals in my backyard. I graduated high school a year early just because I needed to work and find something to do. The whole time I was working before that. And something popped into my head where I saw a buddy of mine had a band. I went to go see him, and as soon as they started, 40 girls rushed to the front of the stage. I was like, I got to learn how to do that.
Yeah, that's called influence, Gary.
That is, and being a musician, you're an influencer. So that's where I kind of grabbed a lot of it. I did a 2-year tour with the Cutting Crew, played with Springsteen, Bon Jovi. So I think it sets me apart a little bit than maybe your typical entrepreneur. I used to book the band. I used to, I bought 2 sound reinforcement companies to send out to other bands. So it was pretty unique. So I got involved in the internet in 1992 and, started from the ground up. My education was a musician. I would go into jobs and they say, okay, well, what did you do? Where's your resume? I go, you kidding me? I played with Springsteen. I was on tour. It's not going to cut it. So I got a CIO magazine, cut my hair. I had really long hair, and went in. And the perception is, oh, most of the people then, I think you're overqualified, they were telling me. So I started from the ground up, did support, and quickly moved to the top tier with Earthlink. And I handled all the Hollywood stars and celebrities because I was an entertainer myself. I worked for Jack Nicholson in his house for a while, so it was all really cool stuff. And then I went down into Studio City, lived there with a producer friend of mine, and I started doing web design. And some of my work was Blair Witch, Charlie's Angels, Hollow Man, Planet of the Apes. But what I found out is these companies could spend millions on a website, but if it didn't rank, it was worth nothing. And that's where the light bulb went off. So my company was, I think, the first, if not the second, internet marketing company. So what our goal is to beat Google and get our clients in the top results. And that's kind of the elevator pitch. I've been doing it for 25 years. I started the company with nothing, and we're about 13 million right now.
Congrats, dude. That's an amazing story. Tell me something. What does influence mean to you? In other words, as a definition, how would you define what influence is?
That's a great question. And I was thinking about that before this podcast. So I think influencer has several different parts, right? So an influencer on the front end for sales is a person who can convince somebody to buy a product, a service, a house, what have you. So they have the ability to affect the purchasing decision. Influencers can be celebrities. They could be gamers with big following. But what that leads to believe is these people are important. I have to follow them. And that is like a definition. Now, for like an executive, there's 2 things. You have your brand of your company, which has to influence people and have to have a perception of being excellent. These guys are reputable. They're transparent. For a CEO or an executive, you have to build your own branding package. When I started, my daughter happens to be blind. And one of the big things for me getting on the internet was to change something that would be impactful for people with disabilities. And I researched the screen reading programs. I use them every day with my daughter. And I was able to do that. I got quoted in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, been on 6 different national television shows just because of that. That is creating your brand and being an influencer. Speaking engagements are huge. In the last 3 years, I've been getting booked a lot. I like to go up and have fun, get the crowd going, do some crazy things. But, you've got to transform yourself and work at it constantly. You have to being a disruptor is good. Being consistent, being straightforward and truthful. If you don't know something, you don't tell somebody you know it. I've caught so many people out in that. So I think there's those different components to it. I like to say that I use all of them all the time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I've sent you my book, Secrets of Influence. It's on Amazon, guys, if you want to get into, the narrative around influence and business leadership. And in the book, I share a lot of frameworks and things like that. And then also, we've launched an academy called Secrets of Influence Academy, so we can actually start training business leaders about how to actually wield influence. Because as you said, oftentimes people don't know what it is. And they're misconstrued. So oftentimes I find, like, if I ask 10 CEOs what's influence, I get 10 different answers. But then you're like, why do you get 10 different answers? It should be quite a clear thing. And so because it's so intangible and because there's different aspects to influence. So for instance, what you mentioned right up front was perception. Influence is really also about shifting perceptions. And then also emotional triggers, like you were describing around the music, right, as an example. So in other words, another emotional trigger is reciprocity, right? So if I bring you onto my show and I give you access to my platform, I create reciprocity by just giving you that access. And so then the opportunity is to influence you, right? To have another conversation or maybe open up your network or whatever the case is. And so when you start to see these things in play and you connect the dots, then suddenly everything becomes about influence. And what I found, and you mentioned it also, Gary, up front, was that, is 1 million followers the definition of influence?
To me?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. You're getting into that really crazy question. I really like that. To me, you could have 1 million followers and be a TikTok and do goofy stuff. So that's not an influencer. You're an entertainer. Where is that going to get you? Maybe on YouTube you can monetize that some way. I really don't think so. In the business world, having 1 million followers, that's nice. I've got about 13,000 on LinkedIn. Maybe that's not a lot to some people, but I'm always putting out information that's valuable that can help somebody.
Yeah,
two aspects that I didn't mention that I meant to is at work, influencing your staff. You have to influence them to motivate them. You have to influence them, maybe a reward system. I take it a little step further. I kind of mentor people. I get them under my wing if I perceive that they're going to be one of those type people that have great potential. And those are a couple other things. Yeah, so 1 million, it's very hard to put your finger on that. Let me turn that on you. Would you think that's an influencer?
Well, no, because
yeah,
what data points can you really trust anymore? Right. So you might have 1 million followers, but are they like 500,000 of bots?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't know. And even if they were all genuine, like, is that the definition of influence? And oftentimes I think it's an indicator of potential influence, but it's really not. I think for me, influence is not about elevating oneself by being an influencer and getting paid to promote brands' products. You know what I mean? Like, that's another thing. But
Right.
are you really creating trust? Do you know what I'm saying? With
Yep.
your community, because you're just promoting you're getting paid to essentially promote other brands' products. That's a pretty shitty kind of influence for me.
Yeah. It's a late night pitch person. I think what's really cool is my bookings are going up with the conferences. That is influencing.
That is
And
influencing. Yeah.
yeah,
That I
100%.
agree. Speaking absolutely, and having peddling ideas that can help people or elevate other people, I think is really the definition of influence. And I think the world with social media, and I want to talk to you about that in a moment, but I think the world with social media has misconstrued the amount of followers that you have across your digital channels with equals influence. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's actually not. I mean, as an example, you can fundamentally change the lives of 500 people in a room when you are speaking. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Oh,
zero
yeah.
followers matter in that context. And so for me, I'm curious to unpack with you, how do you drive or scale your influence personally? So as a speaker, as a CEO, what methods are you using? And, happy for you to double click on the speaking, side of things. How do you, maybe let's do that. How do you book, get the opportunities? You mentioned your bookings as a speaker have increased significantly over the last 3 years. Why is that? What are you doing to achieve that kind of influence?
I could define that really easily. So when I first started, right, it's all about marketing. I had to market my band and I had to market the company, and I'm like, how come I'm not doing that for myself? So I wanted to expedite the process. So I got a PR firm. They're good for a short flight dates type thing because they run out of resources. But I got this great company, and I know what I know, but people don't know what I know. So that's when I got the Wall Street Journal. That's when I got listed in Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Fast. New York Times was on those national broadcast shows. I actually brought my daughter on two of them. That was the beginning and snowball effect, right? So I wasn't getting a lot of speaking engagements, but it branded me, and my company kind of went off the hook. People were calling, unfortunately everybody wanted to talk to me, so I had to figure then a way out. Okay, I have great trusted people. You got to believe in me. The speaking part came out by me putting out really impactful information. People would see a blog, oh, I relate to that. He just gave me great info. You know what? I think it would be good for our organization to bring him in. So that kind of catapulted. Now, since I was just flown to Cancun, which that's a good trip. I went there, yes, I went there under the Apple Leisure Group. You might not know the name, but they do Marriott Vacations, Hilton Vacations, Southwest, United Delta. They own Cheap Caribbean and about 9 other huge online reservation sites. So we've been working with them 3 years, and one of the execs there goes, Gary, you're a funny guy. I think you'd be the perfect guy to do keynote there and help out the agents. I said, sure. So I did that, put 2 work groups together. Now that's a whole nother story. I'm getting calls from people that were there. The Hilton wants me to talk, and I was like, okay. It's like a snowball, but you've got to get out there. And, it sounds easy. To me, the PR company helped out, but that was a long time ago. I don't know how good they are. You've got to talk to them and find out what their resources are, because they're only as good as who they can connect with.
So it's interesting that, right? I mean, I think there's a strong connection between your thinking about a certain problem that someone has and its relationship to thought leadership. So for me, what I was hearing was you put out thought leadership content that was non-obvious, because I think also another thing, people seem to think thought leadership is heading over to ChatGPT and going, write me 3 key things to say about X. And it's not. It's trained on all thinking that already exists. So if you want to be seen as a thought leader, how can you be saying things that everyone's already said? And so what I heard from you was I put out thought leadership, which was non-obvious, original thinking. And in my book, I share frameworks to do that. And that is what got you attention. That is what drove your influence currency with people like the Apple Leisure Group as an example. And then when you pitch up and play, you get to double click on that thought leadership idea, right? And I don't know what you talk about, but I'm pretty sure it's original thinking that you're sharing about a certain problem that the audience has in that conference room. And so I'd love to ask you, what does thought leadership content look like from your perspective? So as a speaker, when you're putting yourself out there on social media to scale your influence, what does thought leadership content look like?
Great question. I will tell you something unique what I do. I do put slides together. I just use those as a background. What I like to do is get to the event early and hear other people, almost like being a musician, get the feel of the room. What's getting them excited and motivated, and then I curtail what I'm going to do based on what I see. Okay, so getting out there on social media, the question was, how do I present myself on there? Or?
Yeah, what does thought leadership content look like? So you know what I mean? Because I think people don't actually know how to be seen as thought leaders. So that's what I'm trying to get from you.
Okay, perfect. So what I do is I put myself in the shoes of a business owner, because I'll take myself back when nobody helped me, nobody gave me any money. I self-funded everything. And I said, here's my problems. How can I relate to that person who has those same problems? I really listen to people first. So when I create that content, I talk to hundreds of people a week. I was up at 4 a.m. working today. So I have a pulse on what's going on with businesses right now. And when I create content, it's specifically going to help either different verticals, either SMBs, small businesses, or enterprises. Like I do consulting, so I have to angle my content there. It's not a sales pitch, though. There may be a soft part in there of a pitch, but when I put out accurate, truthful data, people get it. And if you're truthful, straightforward, and transparent about what you're doing, that's the content I put out. I'm not one of those Pinterest guys, TikToks, or anything. I do a lot on my blog. We've got unbelievable rankings and huge traffic. I do a lot on LinkedIn because that's where a lot of people look for thought leaders. I'll do some on Facebook. Twitter to me it's a flash in the pan. It's a waste of time. You're not going to have evergreen content. It goes away like this. So those are the channels that I'm currently using. I will say that I need to get more involved with like YouTube and putting, professional quality out there like you have. That's what I'm lacking.
The thing for me, it's always interesting. I'm going to keep that question as a standing one now, because I think there's lots of points of departure there. And that I think could really help people to understand what thought leadership is and how to actually communicate about thought leadership like you were describing. Are you an author? Have you written a book?
No, but I want to. I really do.
Why do you want to write a book?
Okay. I think I want to do maybe two versions. One as of growing up to be a rock star, what you think you're going to be doing, and ending up where you're going to be, the journey. It was, every time I tell people about my journey, like, dude, you need to write a book. That was so fascinating. I've heard that 30 different times. So I thought about doing one there, and then I thought about one doing on the business angle of how to take your business and really get challenged, because the internet's the big challenge, right, with Google, and running your business as a leader, as a mentor. Sometimes I consider myself a psychiatrist with employees, because they're dear to me. All the people that work for me, my A team, I treat them like I would treat family, to an extent.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you want to write about. But what benefit would you see happening if you were to write a book and it became, for argument's sake, a #1 Amazon bestseller? what would that create for you as a business leader in the context of influence?
Great question. I think it would encourage people, because when I started, you had nothing. It would encourage people to like, holy crap, this guy had such hardships. I could do this. You know, it's kind of cliche saying the American dream, but it was. It's not easy. Everybody thinks, oh, I talk to millennials, oh, I want 100 grand out of school, yet their application of the knowledge they've learned is worthless. So, you know, to talk about some things like that, oh my God, I think I could do this. If I could inspire some people to take that leap of faith, it is not easy. Everybody says, oh, look at you, you have X, Y, Z. Yeah, you know how it took me to get there? You've not walked in my shoes for one day. The business part would be pretty transparent. It'd be more on a marketing side, plus that leadership, how I got to where I was, and how I have 100 and some employees, and how you handle that. Because right there, that's I'm about ready to resign from that and have my son take over. How's that?
So it would be about making a positive impact.
Yes, a change, having something change. Just like when you're selling, you have to change your perspective of somebody. I don't think I mentioned yet that because of the music industry, it is, in my time, like the late 70s, 80s, it was drug rampant, right? Everybody was wasted. I lost 10 good friends, musicians, to ODing and things like that. So when I came to California, I'm always thinking, here's the problem. How do I fix it? I was thinking of this last night, too, about the homeless problem in the United States. I have a fix. I started speaking at rehabs. And if I could save one person's life, that is precious to me. So I spoke it a lot, and I had a lot of kids come up to me, and they still interact with me. Hey, can you hire me? And I'm like, well, you're not ready yet, but.
Yeah, I think there's a big ethical consideration to influence, right? Because
there is.
Because there's so much bullshit out there. So, for instance, I think every single status you can buy now. So
Yes.
if you want 1 million followers, you buy that. If you want a Wall Street Journal best-selling book, New York Times best-selling book, you buy that. Even podcasting, there was this media company that basically got caught out for increasing. I'm not even shitting you. What they basically did was, so you basically sign up as a podcaster, okay?
Yep.
And then what they do, and it's very clever, they take your RSS feed and they integrate it into mobile games. So you know how free to play, but then you must remove the ads, you have to pay.
Yes.
So as the ads are served, like my kids are always on iPhones and stuff, as everybody else's kids are, anyway, so as they're playing these games, like whatever it is, like Emoji Win, like whatever, the ad would play, and it would actually play the audio from your RSS feed, even just for 1 second, and then the ad would close. And so, in other words, you were getting fake downloads for your audio. So what you would do is you would go to an advertiser and say, look, I'm getting 100,000 downloads per episode, but actually you were getting 100,000 seconds. Do you know?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like it. So this is what I'm saying. So you saying that you're an influencer as a podcast host, right? And you're getting 1.2 million downloads or plays a month, but you're actually getting nothing. And so you're ethically using influence, right? Because everyone's like, oh, well, how many downloads do you get? I mean, it's so fucking ridiculous. I get asked that question all the time by PR people. And I'm like, fuck sakes, guys, this isn't Joe Rogan. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's not what this show is. And so the ethical way to use influence as a podcast host is to have conversations like this about a topic that you feel is important to the world of business, right? Or the business leaders or CEOs and entrepreneurs. And it's why I did this series called Secrets of Fail, because there's this, I wanted to paint the counter narrative that failure is bad, right? So at school, what are my kids learning when they have a test? Like my son's doing his times 3 table today. So if he fails that test, what does it teach him? Failure is bad. And so when you get into the business world, you and I know, and most, I can say most, I don't know, but but failure is a prerequisite to success. That's what you were also saying. You know, it's like it's 15 years of fuck ups basically to become successful. And so this is why that for me is a positive ethical use of influence, right? Because I still believe that, and then that became a book, you know, and that's been, you know, gone out there, and all the content's gone out there, and all the channels, and blah blah blah. So over time, and then also I want to go and speak at schools about what real business leaders know about failure, and share real stories with them. And go, guys lost millions of dollars. They lost businesses. They had to lay off people and with families and this kind of stuff. And they had to do it to become successful. Do you see? And so how valuable is that as an influencer, right? For me being an influencer, to make a positive impact. And that for me is really what influence is about. It's about elevating people up, not about elevating yourself.
Hey, you know what? I couldn't agree. I am blown away by that, really, because what I see in the education right now, nobody is being prepared. Nobody knows what's going on. If they had business people going in there, because to me, failure is not failure. It's a learning curve. If you keep failing at the same thing, you're pretty insane. But if you fail at one thing and just go like, holy crap, I made the biggest mistake. How do I fix that? And then you make an action plan to fix it. But going into the schools, God bless you, man. I think that's one of the greatest things. That is an influencer, because you could change a kid's life. He could be sitting there, oh, I just failed the test. I'm going to bomb out of school. You know what? I'm just going to drop out. Maybe I'm just going to go hang out with the gang down the street. If you can affect, and that's it, right? Mm-hmm. The effect of somebody, that's the greatest thing I think you could ever have. Kudos to you, my man.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you for saying that, man. I mean, just one story I'd like to share with you. So when I wrote my first book, it was called Your Inner Game, and it was 12 principles for high-impact entrepreneurs. And anyway, I was doing the PR thing, and on radio, and it was TV, SABC, and whatever. And then I got invited to talk at Redham School for Girls, I think it was. And there were over 1,000 kids, or I call them kids, but they're, let's say 14 to 18 years old, like just about to, sort of on their way into the real world. And I remember telling them the story, and I was using an analogy of a child, and I was actually talking about myself. And I said to them, people like my friends were telling me that my parents wanted me to go to university, but I didn't know what to study. Everyone kind of knew what their passions were, but I didn't know what that was, and I didn't know what my purpose was, and and I paint this, and I was just literally landing all the things that I felt they were already thinking, to your point about reading the room or listening to the audience. And then I said to them, but what if I told you that this kid became a #1 Amazon bestseller, and I just hit them with all my accolades, and the whole room went, whoa, it was amazing. And anyway, so that talk, just to remind people about influence again, like that talk, and I phoned my wife afterwards, and I said to her, that wasn't a talk, it was a spiritual experience. When you had rapt attention for 1,000 kids for an hour. Do you know what I mean? Like that for me is real impact, measurable, quantifiable impact, where I actually still believe that I benefited the most from that, because, it's a spiritual thing to contribute beyond yourself.
I'm super impressed with that. You think in a really positive, life-affecting way to hit kids, because I think I'll get the millennials or whomever is graduating. They don't have that perspective. They've never been taught that or encouraged. What they do is come in. I swear, everyone. I want 100,000 a year. And I'm like, 100,000. I said, look, I started from the bottom up. That's where you're going to start. Well, no, you're going to pay me, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. And I said, you know what? We need to stop the interview right now because you're not going to work for me. And they go, why? And I said, you need to show me what you could do, and I'll compensate you on your efforts. And I end the interview right there. I interview everybody in my company. Anybody that's walked through the doors, and through the years, I've probably had about 800. I've talked to everybody on some level.
So just on that then,
Yeah.
what is your advice to business leaders, a CEO, entrepreneur, maybe a solopreneur, who wants to scale their impact in a positive way? What's your advice to them about scaling their influence? How, methods, tips, practical things?
Inside the business or
Inside a business, you can pick wherever you want to go. Happy either
okay.
way.
I see a lot of CEOs in my industry that are very aloof. You can't talk to them. They're in the boys club. They're in the management club. People feel excluded, and you're never going to get 100% from them. What I do is, wasn't on a daily basis, but definitely a couple times a week, I would go sit down with somebody. What are you struggling with? What's happening, man? How's life? Just basic things like that. They feel like, whoa, he cares about me. And then if I could make that impact or influence them what they need to do correctly, it's a win-win. So for a CEO, unless, if you're with 3M or something like that, you've got 100,000 employees, it's a little bit more difficult. But let's focus on entrepreneurs within that $2 to $15 million range. If you're not active with the team and you're in the boys club and you only stick with that management group, you're losing out on revenue. You're losing out on being impactful with people, because what got you there that they haven't got there? There has to be something. Why don't you share it? I've had at least 40 people leave my company and start their own SEO companies. They became my competitors. And I said, you know what? That's fine. I'll still crush them, but it's okay. My one favorite guy, I'll give you a quick story. One of my favorite guys, I bank at Bank of America when I lived in San Diego, and I met this guy, Michael Frazier, right? Young kid. And I walked there, and, oh, hi, Mr. Grant. He was always positive, right? And I said, okay, you want me to give you my account? Oh, no, it's blah, 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 blah. And I said, how'd you know that? He goes, oh, I have photographic memory. And I was like, oh, really? And I go, what do you do for fun? I had this long conversation with him at the counter. He goes, well, I like to go around to businesses and try to hack their Wi-Fi, because back then everybody left it unlocked. And he goes, I wouldn't do anything malicious. I just let them know that I hacked them. And I said, so you're pretty good with the computer? He goes, I love it. I said, what the hell are you doing working at Bank of America? I want to hire you. I'm going to hire you. I want you to come to my office. I think he was making $30,000 a year. I said, I'm giving you 60 and going to start you there. He worked all the way up 2.5 years, making 130 grand, because I compensated him based on what he would do. He would handle like 20th Century Fox. He handled Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Fast Company. He was the project manager. One problem I should have had, because we became very friendly, was have a no poaching clause in my agreements with clients, because he's working at Entrepreneur. That blew me away, because I really loved him and needed him. But yeah, that was a funny story, picking that guy up.
Well, just to double click on that point you made around, you've had several guys who've been working with you going off to start their own SEO agencies. I think that's actually influence from your side, because clearly you taught them enough that, enough of the skill set or the discipline of SEO. And then also, as a human, as a leader, you gave them the confidence to decide to do that. And let's put aside the contracts and the unethical stuff that may have happened after the fact. But if we're just looking at you, Garry Grant, as a business influencer, this is my thing. Like, how do you take a business leader, become a business influencer? And how do you know if you're succeeding? It's when someone says, dude, I'm out. And I remember my previous company, I also had people quit and then start a business. They didn't quit to go work for someone else. And that was all what I believe is because I gave them the freedom and the environment to grow and learn and to become who they didn't know that they could be. And then they went, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to go work for myself. And that for me is a great accolade for you, as a business leader.
Hey, thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate that. Somebody likes, you know what? I like what he's doing, man. I want to follow in those kind of footsteps. You know, hey, they do the exact same thing as me. You know, fine, whatever. Um, but that's a really interesting concept because when you find somebody trying to imitate you, isn't that the best form of flattery?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they say.
Yeah. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if I want anybody duplicating me. I don't think they can, but
I think they're better forms of flattery. Personally, for me,
right. I'm too old now. People are like, oh, dude, you know, I'm 65 and I'm still doing this. I never want to retire. It would be too boring. I do like going out and playing golf and playing my guitar. I got my 3 guitars in the next room. And at night, my family was going to kill me until last month. I went to Cancun, got kind of a reset there. And I came back and I said, 5 o'clock, I'm not talking to clients anymore after 5. Because sometimes, you know, like today, I started at 4 a.m. 5 o'clock, I shut down, have the family time. How many kids do you have?
2.
Young, old? Or...
Franklin's 8, Reagan's 5.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days. Yeah, my son works with me. He's been working with me for 16 years. Genius kid. Different than me. Very, he doesn't have that outrageous outgoing personality, but he's on the level and super smart. My daughter, even though she's blind, she goes, Dad, I'm not handicapped. I hate when people say that because I'm handy capable. And she's working, yeah, that's, she got that from me, definitely.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Influence.
Influence, yes. I think I gave her too much because she drives me nuts sometimes, but all the kids do that. She's working for this in the state of Florida, remotely here, helping vets out right now with that new class action lawsuit where they lost their hearing. So she could really relate to them. And she also worked in social services. When she was a young kid, this is really interesting. She's an influencer, right? She's helped people. She likes doing that. I think she was like 14, and she wanted to volunteer. She always wants to help somebody. And I have a feeling it's because nobody wants to help her. And she went into the Los Angeles Burn Center, and because she can't see, she's not shocked at what these kids look like. Because when I went in there, I had tears in my eyes. I was like, holy shit. But then when I heard my daughter talking to them, these kids loved her. They wanted her back every week. And she goes, you know what pisses me off? When people, they don't want to touch me. They think they're going to get the blind disease. And then they're always, oh, what's wrong with you? What happened to your eyes? And they touch them and everything. She goes, so I created business cards that told them I was born blind at birth. I have detached retinas. That's it. You're not going to catch it. And she was handing out business cards when people bother her like that.
That's
pretty
crazy,
cool.
man. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think that's a good point to end on. Because there's a whole conversation also to have around like influence as an entrepreneur at home. You know what I mean? Because like you mentioned, I got 2 young kids, and how do you prepare them for the world that you know is they're going to arrive in, which is AI enabled or whatever. And just little things around like principles and standards. I was putting my son to bed the other night. I was explaining to him, you know, what's the bridge between, you know, ambition and goals, real achievements. And I was like, standards, you know, and just talking to him about things that are important. Do you know what I mean? And it might not, they don't have to understand it all. You just need to start planting the seeds so that when they do get older and there's a situation where you can go, listen, here's why you're failing at your grade, or here's why, the standards, dude, like you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. And I think, you know, and also what's really hard, and what I found is, you know, it's hard to be present. You know, if you've had a heavy day and you're under financial stress or cash flow, or you're losing staff, or you got like whatever it is, to come home as an entrepreneur, especially a father, and just be able to turn off, it's like it's almost impossible. And so I got to have a couple whiskeys before I start relaxing. You know what I mean? And I'm like, then I'm like, I shift my state, and then I'm like, okay, now I can play, and now I can pick my daughter up and throw her in the air, and do you know what I mean?
I like the whiskey thing. I'm the Woodford Reserve bourbon dude.
Oh, are you?
I live outside Nashville. You have
Of course
to.
you
I
do.
never drank. Yeah, I never drank bourbon.
Yeah.
I was always the tequila guy from California. Now I'm the bourbon dude from Music City.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't really a whiskey fan, and then I also believe that as a consumer, you should always support the local. Don't go and buy the big brand stuff. Support the local entrepreneurs, the small guys. Anyway, so I saw this whiskey called Breckenridge, and Breckenridge, if you know, I'm sure you know, but it's a ski resort here. It's one of the bigger ones, and
they sell weed there. There was a show on Breckenridge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I watched that. It was all these weed sellers and everything. I thought it was pretty funny.
So I saw this Breckenridge local whiskey, so I picked that up, and let me tell you, it is the best whiskey.
What?
I still believe, I've done Johnny Walker and all this stuff, but it's Breckenridge. Right. I'll ping you the it's not the bourbon though. There's two. There's a bourbon one, and then there's the pure one, and the pure one is just fucking unreal. It's so good. I don't drink whiskey like my dad did, and that's probably why I didn't. But now, it's such a good, smooth rye, sort of based whiskey. It's amazing.
You're gonna have to connect with me after, and I'll share some of mine poisons, and you could share me that. Now, wait a second. You're not being an influencer for this brand, are you? You just told me on it.
I probably should be. Positive contribution to society, my man. That's what's going on.
Absolutely. I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because you've put out a few books. When you do that, and this is an influencer because you're going to influence me and help me, do you have like a ghostwriter? How do you even do that?
Yeah. So, no. In fact, I think ghostwriting is... In fact, firstly, the first point I want to say is the self-publishing industry hasn't been disrupted since 1979. It's always been the same. So you either had to pay a ghostwriter, which, by the way, costs between $25,000 and $250,000, and then it's going to take you between 6 months and a year to get a product from a ghostwriter. So if you're trying to influence your market, speed actually matters. And so what we do at Showworks Media, which is the influence company, we work with basically CEOs to help them become, one of the things we do anyway, is become best-selling authors. And so the way that we do this is by taking content. So we work with you to create a strategy, an influence strategy, like specifically what impact are you trying to make in a positive way? And then based on that strategy, we put together a content plan, like a video production plan. And we put a film crew, we send it to your office or your home, wherever you want to shoot it, and we shoot this library of content. And then we repurpose that into like a year's worth of content, short format articles, the whole thing, which becomes part of your launch campaign. But then the smart thing to do, and we can produce a best-selling book 300% faster than anyone else in America. And so what we do is we take artificial generative intelligence and the transcripts from your videos to create the manuscript. So we can create like a 80,000 word manuscript or whatever the words are in about 24 hours.
What?
So you go from 5.5 months or 6 months to a year to a day. And then we launch your campaign with all the content and the book. And obviously we have humans who edit and prose and accuracy and all that kind of shit. But it's your tone, like it's you, like it captures your essence, everything you've said, everything you believe, your values and your vision and your mission and the things you want to change about society or the world. All of that's captured in video and then also in the book. But what I've found, and I can share with you a case study actually for haiku. And by the way, all this stuff I put in the book about how to create the best business card you can ever have, which I believe is a best-selling book. And so I put that in the final chapter of my book. But just to illustrate how influential the system is, and I call it an influence system because it is. But basically, my client, Simon Taylor Haiku, they basically do around $50 million a year, heavily funded, blah, blah. And we deployed this influence system the way that I've described, which comprises of content and books and all this kind of stuff. And their global share of voice, this is nuts, right? Their global share of voice went from 2% to 11% in 7 days.
What?
Yeah,
That's
man.
insane. A global. All right. So here's what we have to do. You're helping me as this influencer. You're a really bright young guy, man. I wish I knew what I did at your age. We could talk about this offline. I want to work with you, and if you could help me with that, here's my reciprocation, because I don't want anything for anything. If I can help you on the internet with the SEO, you got me personally. Got 25 years. And we could discuss that and figure what your goals are, if that means anything to you.
It does. It's an emotional trigger. It's reciprocity.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
see, this is exactly what we're teed up right up front, man. This is all about influence, right? It's such a cool thing when you start to really get into it and apply it. You can really start to create amazing relationships with people, that you wouldn't be able to do, without having this information or knowledge. So I appreciate you for that, 100%.
All right, no problem. And you know what's really kind of cool? I'm in with a lot of different CEOs at my golf club. I play with Kid Rock. I played with John Wayne's daughter and
Wow.
granddaughter. On the first hole, it took us 25 minutes to get off because it was just fabulous. They have 5 houses in Florida, which I'm now staying at any time. But I got this, Gary, I was thinking about writing something. I was like, I got this guy that I met. That is that momentum, right? Even if it's small things. I don't know if you know the comedian Ron White. Have you ever heard of him?
I haven't,
did
no.
Okay, he did the tour with the Cable Guys. Look him up. He's one of the funniest guys on the planet. He has Ron White. He smokes a cigar and drinks bourbon. So I'll leave you with this last quick story. So I'm out on the third hole. I like to go out solo because I'm pretty much practicing. And this guy comes up to me, long hair, right? Freaky looking. He's got his dog in the golf cart. And he goes, do you mind if I, play along with you? And I said, sure. And I was already going, so we didn't really say anything. We get up to the next green, and I says, oh, man, excuse me. I'm Gary. Nice to meet you. He goes, I'm Ron White. And he's looking at me like, yeah, oh, my God, right? I was like, okay, cool. And he was in shock. So we go up to the next hole, and he's just staring at me like really weird. And we go hit the ball. We go up to the next green. We're not really saying anything. And I said, oh, hey, Ron, what do you do? I've only sold 5,000 million copies. I'm worth 50 million. I own it to keep. He was waiting to tell me that. And I was like, oh, shit. Well, I still don't know you. But did you know I played with Springsteen, Bon Jovi, Sly Stone? He goes, no, you did? I said, yeah, man, come on. We became best friends. He's on his last tour, and he promised me he's going to come out. We're going to go on a little golf tour together. But he's the guy that needs a book. His story is pretty fascinating. And he was telling me on the course, he doesn't drink anymore. He had a problem with it. And if you imagine, you're always going up on stage every night drinking. So he went to hypnotherapy, and in 6 sessions, he doesn't drink. Well, he switched over to weed, but,
Yeah, nothing wrong with either one. I think everybody's got to have their poison, man. So, I think, I mean, it's a coping mechanism, right? I mean, to be successful, you would have had to go through some form of process of suffering. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be Ron White if he wasn't that sort of individual. He wouldn't have $50 million. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And he wouldn't be speaking and a comedian, And so I fully understand. Like, I've also been known to abuse the old whiskey now and then. You know what I mean? But at some point, you got to make those decisions. And I actually stopped drinking for 5 years. So
Wow.
because when my son was born, I was like, you know what? I realized actually that I was no longer the center of the universe, and that my life was now forever going to come second. Do you know what I mean? In terms of philosophy. And so I needed to, we weren't in a good place at all. Like, everything was just really shit. And so I made that choice, just like Ron did, to stop drinking and doing, like, smoking weed, like, just completely sober. And let me tell you, my life changed. It was incredible. My business just scaled, doubled revenues every year for 3 years. I wrote books, built this massive podcast. Everything changed because of that one choice. And so, that's
phenomenal, man. I have loved this conversation. You're fascinating. You're just going to do monumental stuff. You already have, okay? Thank you so much. Just this brief time we're talking, I have goose pimples right now. There's not many people that do that. Ron White didn't even do that. So I'm really excited. Let's please. Where are you located? You in the U.S. or?
Yeah. I'm in Denver.
Okay, that's why you know Breckenridge. Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. I speak out there all the time. Have you heard of OxyFresh carpet cleaning?
No.
Search carpet cleaning, and they're going to be number one if you search carpet cleaning. Yeah, they're JB, the owner's a good friend of mine. I go out and speak every year. I went into the. Is there something called the Black Hills Mountains with casinos or something?
Yes, there is. So if you're going out west, there's a. I've never actually been there, but I've seen it.
Yeah, I couldn't breathe when I was there, and they just kept shoving tequila in front of me. It was horrific, and I had to be the keynote speaker. Yeah. But
That would have been fun.
if you want to bring your family to Nashville, I will give you VIP. I know everybody out here. See if I can get Kid Rock involved. I think your kids are too young for that, but you'll enjoy that.
I know who is, yeah. Well, look, Gary, I really appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate your time, and obviously we'll keep the conversation going.